functions of chi. And the mnemonic I remember is awe detract. So, activation of different things, warming, defense, so defense against especially external pathogenic influences or EPI. Uh, D track is transformation, T is transformation, and then the C is containment. And again, at this point in time, some of these concepts you're not going to really be aware of, like containment. That usually refers to the spleen's ability to contain blood. So anytime you have bleeding disorders, including it could be menstrual, could be blood in your stool, blood and diarrhea, could be just other things of containment can also mean like holding the organs in their place. So organ prolapse, like a rectal prolapse, usually they view that as a loss or lack of spleen chi, not holding the organs in place or supporting them or containing them. So the activation is activation. So awe did track. Activation is the first one. Activation is a lot of times expressed in the terms of the kidney chi, the phases in life, from going from childhood to adulthood, right? That whole teenage years, all the start of menstruation, when males start to get facial hair and secondary male sex characteristics, that's considered an activation. Can also be activation of just different metabolic activities as well. The warming is a big one. A lot of times you will ask patients, do they have, when we get to the examination and the patient interrogation, you're going to ask them about sensations of cold or heat. Usually cold can be from a number of different things. It can be chi. It can also be, so warming can be from lack of chi. So a chi vacuous, or, so, and again, I like the Weissman terms, repletion, which is too much, or vacuity, which is too little. Remember when we talk about yin yang? That applies to chi as well. If you have a surfeit or a repletion, you got just too much, and that's talking about the imbalances that occur. But lack of cold hands, cold feet, sensation of cold, chills and fever. Right? If you have a fever without chills, that's different than if you have fever and chills. It's big, and sweating or no sweating. Those can also be significant. That's another one with containment. I talked about blood. Sweat can also be one of the functions of chi that contains. If you're sweating profusely, that can mean that the chi is not holding the pores closed like they should. Again, that's going to be more of an external defensive chi type of problem. The other one, defense, that one's is more what type of chi would be effective or involved in defensive.
Wei?
Wei chi, yeah, that's the defense, and that's pore opening and closing. Again, this whole concept of whether disease is inside the body or outside. You really don't see that too much in Western medicine, the concept of how deep is a disease. The only time I've really heard it is kind of in chiropractic circles when they start talking about vaccines. And I don't know how true this is, but it's one of the arguments I've heard is that when you get a disease like chicken pox, you get the virus, you get some intestinal stuff maybe, but what happens is it percolates through from the inside and it expresses itself on the outside via those little pustules, right? When you get a vaccine, you don't get those pustules. So one of the arguments, and again, I'm not 100% sure if this is really a valid argument, but the body never really thoroughly fights the disease and it stays inside. It never gets expressed and expelled through the skin. So just a different concept that you run into with Chinese medicine that you really don't get with Western medicine. But that is typically for external. Do you guys familiar with the external pathogenic influences?
No.
So wind, cold, damp, heat can be an external pathogen. Summer heat's another one. So those are the 5 big ones that you have that are external pathogenic influences. They all, when they affect the body, again, if chi is in balance and if it's in good amounts, you're not going to get that invasion of the body from these external pathogenic influences. If, for some reason, maybe you're overtaxed. Like summer heat's a big one. You're out working in the fields, late summer, you're sweating, maybe you forgot your hat, and now all of a sudden the sun's beating down. You can get a taxation fatigue, which will allow that disease to penetrate. Especially they're kind of big about, not letting sweat kind of get too cold or expose yourself to really cold breezes. That the chill and fever. That's actually one of the cardinal signs of an EPI is chills and fever, and especially with or without sweating, but especially that chills and fever. When wind enters the body, what do you think? And again, Chinese medicine really is, they're almost very literal. So when wind gets in the body, what do you think wind might present with?
Too much air or
Yes.
cold.
So what are properties of wind? Think of nature. What happens when you see wind hit the trees? What happens to the
It
trees?
moves.
They'll move. So
sways.
you can have fasciculations. You can have pain that moves in the body. It's never in one spot, but it moves around. Tremors. That's a wind type element, right? And typically through the liver. So defense is the other one, and then containment or transformation. Transformation is big, like I said, with not only it kind of combines with the like activation and transformation. I would say that there's a little bit of that with your stages in life. Actually, kind of interesting because 7, and you'll see numerology in Chinese medicine a lot as well. 7 is a big number. I mean, think about it. There's kind of so from 0 to 7. And think of children. This is so from a newborn to 7 years old, they're pretty much kids. 7 to 14s, they're not kids, but they're not adults yet. And at 14, that's when you start seeing females go through menstruation. You start seeing, and again, some would say it's 7 for females and 8 for males, because you see a slight difference, but usually 7 is so 14, 21. Now you're an adult, and there's this whole concept of 7-year cycles. And I can't remember the exact. There's according to Chinese theory, the average patient should live to, I want to say it's 12 meridians, 7 years. I believe that's so that you should live to that number if you're in a perfect world. It doesn't usually follow through, but it's almost like biblical.
Wait, does that mean like 84 years old?
So it's actually longer than that. 7 isn't right. It's the 12 meridians. Maybe it was 12 years for each of them. It's longer than what we normally live, ultimately. I'll get back to that because I can't remember my exact reference for that.
So if you take the 14 meridians, then you're
Well, so that's another one. So which meridians do you use?
98.
When they started out, so one of the things with Chinese medicine is each of these, like the yin and yang, concept of qi, the 5 elements, these are all significant kind of breakthroughs in the history and the development of Chinese medicine that, and the thing I like about Chinese medicine is they didn't take the yin and yang and just get rid of it once they started 5 elements. What they did was they got the 5 elements and they tried to rectify it with this concept of yin and yang. So each time they come up with a different, whether it's the 5 elements or warm disease theory, cold disease theory, they try to incorporate it. So they try to keep the best of what they had and try to see how this other philosophy or concept fits into it. So again, each of these, when you talk about them, they don't always, in some cases, you use 5 element. In some, you use a yin-yang philosophy. In some, you'll use maybe a warm disease theory. So the tricky part is you won't know which ones until you kind of experience, especially disease patterns, dampness in the spleen or liver. The liver is notorious. It's supposed to govern smooth flowing qi through the body. So a lot of times your liver issues, problems with the liver, are going to be with problems with free coursing of the energy through the channels. The liver is the general of your body in terms of each of the. That's another one is just even conceptually each of the organs. There is a political. This kind of had a lot to do with even the political distribution or the way things should be ordered in life. If the liver is the general, which one do you think is the emperor?
The heart?
Heart, yeah, that's your chi, that's your shen, your spirit, that's the supreme ruler. And they have other different ones. There's I can't remember what the specific dignitary is, but each of the organs kind of has one of those, and they kind of view them as how the body runs itself, I guess, or how it's ordered. I think that was pretty much it. We talked about activation, transfer, or containment. We talked about containment, so just holding blood in place, other fluids in place, or organs in place, a dropped arch, like that. So that's a dropped, that can be considered a failure of containment, but that would be probably more in the musculoskeletal or musculotendinous channels. I think that was about it. So different pathologies of chi. So we'll go through these because those are basically vacuity. So lack of chi is a big one. Also chi stagnation, which is really if you ask about what causes pain, they would call that a B syndrome, BI, and that's basically lack of energy or lack of chi flowing properly, either through the channels, or the regular channels, the collaterals, and the low channels, or along into the other. All right, so there's other channels that aren't along. The Chong and Mai are kind of different ones. You have the 8 extraordinary channels, which I think actually, my understanding, if I have everything correct, the 8 extraordinary meridians, they're really distilled down to what they call the confluence points, or the master points. So they've taken those old, and I think that's a real primitive, like the original manuscripts, oldest ones, probably had some version of different energy flow that was adapted or kind of changed a little bit to the more, what we consider the 12 that we got, lung, large intestine, stomach, spleen. But what's left is those command points, or the confluent points, which really are just one point that will give you these broad areas to treat. So that's really the big thing, is either vacuity, lack of chi, especially things like lung. Obviously that would be a bad one. Kidney, chi, right? Especially essence deficiency or vacuity, big, because then you're going to start seeing things like early aging. A lot of the stuff, gray hair, wrinkly skin, right? And of course, B syndromes are the stagnation type of conditions are more significant. And there's different types of that too. You can have B syndromes that are cold, B that are hot. There's actually 4 different ones that we'll get into later. But that's the big one. And also along with that is the concept of counterflow chi. So they add that in there, but very rarely do you see counterflow chi. What do you think counterflow chi would be?
So that'll cause your chi to deplenish, or?
Well, it's just going the wrong way. Hiccups. Sign of that would be a counterflow chi. Of vomiting. That's the stomach should go down and descend, but if you vomit, that's chi going the wrong way. There's only a few meridians where you'll talk about counterflow chi, and those are 2 of them right there. So that's, I think, about it for now. That'd be good enough for today. That's about 10 minutes.